With the demise of the Rian Johnson-led Star Wars movies and Disney's sudden retraction of production, it should be more and more apparent to larger publishers that consumers are smart enough to simply sit it out. When Black Ops 4 released, I had no desire to purchase the game. I've always played FPS with the mindset of playing through the campaign is the primer for the online gameplay, like a tutorial of sorts. I also admittedly enjoy the story aspect of FPS games and games as a whole. With the controversy surrounding the story in Battlefield 5 and the complete lack of a story in Black Ops 4, I am beginning to think that publishers have lost sight of what an FPS game is. Very quickly, things that it is not. It is not an opportunity for the creator and publisher to push their political biases on the consumer. Of course, they completely have the option to do so, but then people like myself and others will sit it out. Battlefield 5 is a great example of this. The inclusion of women was fine, and the telling of perhaps a less-known story is great. But when the fan base pointed out that the vast majority of fighting in World War II was done by men, and that rewriting stories to include women and erase men that died was in poor taste, DICE took a tactic of shame, calling gamers uneducated and not smart enough to understand that it wasn't necessarily how the war went, but how the war could have gone. Going further and telling fans that if they didn't like it, don't buy it because they don't care. Battlefield 5 was a failure in the field of AAA titles, and in comparison to Battlefield 1 and 2. Gamers that sat it out had their voices heard. Developers at DICE told gamers they didn't know their history, and even if they had rewritten something, it doesn't matter, this is how it could have been. Wait, are you telling me I'm wrong? But if I'm right, it doesn't matter because make-believe? That is what it sounded like to me and many other gamers. Sales of the game reflect this poor storytelling and bad attitude on behalf of the maker to the consumers. Moving on to Black Ops 4's full-price game with a mandatory season pass to stay relevant on the online gameplay arena, microtransactions through a cash shop, no campaign, and loot boxes. That's right, folks. Treyarch made a free-to-play game with a $109 price tag for the first year of gameplay. Live service is a code word for scam, Anthem. We have so many examples of FTP FPS games on the market that this sort of bait-and-switch nonsense is just sad. Sales of Black Ops 4 reflect this in the lack of consumer interest, with almost 1 million less copies sold than projected. Its poor sales continued on to be one of the issues cited by Activision for needing to lay off 1,000 employees. The sad moment this year was realizing that if the good components of BF5 and BO4 had been combined into one game, they would have had the top-selling game of the year. If they had created a fun FPS game with an excellent campaign, great online gameplay, stayed away from politics, not insulted the consumers waiting to buy the game, and released DLC for free like BF5 is doing, they could have had an awesome game that sold for $60 and had a cosmetic cash shop in-game, which would have been crazy busy. As more and more games come into the market, at an ever-growing volume, gamers are going to have more and more choices, but the same amount of time to play. This means that over-the-top price gouging is going to close studios and publishers in the long run. This means creating these preachy woke games and talking down to your target market is going to come at a cost. I hope this cost does not come at the end of a franchise I personally love. I know there are gamers out there that have already suffered the loss of a franchise that had more stories to tell. But through poor development and management, they will never see the world they grew to love again.